Okay, so major energy shift from the last video to this one. This movie has been described as the feel bad movie of the year by Bloody Disgusting. And of course, that is A24's new release, Bring Her Back. This one was written and directed by Danny and Michael Filippo, who also did Talk to Me in 2022. So I had seen Talk to Me in theaters in 2022. It is a movie that I really enjoy. It is a movie that I have been called out for by my fiance. It's kind of in this genre of horror movies, the subgenre of horror movies, where everything is sort of a bummer and there's not really a feel good ending. There's very few feel good moments throughout these kinds of movies. And so I am constantly being made fun of for really enjoying more nihilistic and kind of sad, heart wrenching horror movies. And this one, so going into this one, I was expecting something similar to Talk to Me in that general tone, that general mood. This one stars Sally Hawkins, Billy Barrett, and Sora Wong. A brother and sister uncover a terrifying ritual at the secluded home of their new foster mother. And so we have Andy and Piper, the siblings that the movie follows, who are experiencing trauma in different ways, right? Andy is a little bit more aggressive, more intense, and Piper seems to be portrayed as sort of maybe not naive, but kind of in that general ballpark. Like she's sort of shielded and protected by her brother. So, seemingly on brand for A24 horror and the Filippo brothers, as we're coming to learn, this movie is about grief and what happens when we hold on too much to people that we've lost. It explores a lot of things around trauma as well. It's a very heavy tone and it's a very heavy theme. So, another thing we can expect now of this duo is a very well put together, well made, visually stunning movie. This one didn't disappoint in any of those areas. It was a pleasure to look at and had a variety of really interesting shots. The music was excellent. We didn't, however, get a stunning montage scene like we did in Talk to Me, but very close. I don't think that's definitely in my top maybe 5 horror movie scenes of all time from Talk to Me. This one didn't have a scene quite of that caliber, but overall, the movie was very effective, very well put together. The performances in this movie are excellent. Sally Hawkins is terrifying and deeply, deeply unsettling. She manages to balance this kind of peppy, adoptive parent attitude while also just making me so uncomfortable in every scene. She was just very unpredictable. I wasn't sure where she was going next. And that was very effective throughout the story. The siblings, the main sort of protagonists of the movie, also did a fantastic job. They were so sweet together with one another. And so watching them struggle throughout this movie is really heartbreaking. You really sort of bond with them and their story and really worry about their well being from the beginning to the end. Jonah Wren Phillips, the kid who is most recognizable from the posters, also does an excellent job. Has very few speaking lines, but just his presence and everything they did to sort of make him look the way that he did, also very unsettling and also very well done. I also loved this setting in this movie. The house that everything takes place in, the decorations within the house, the exterior, lots of like wet, woody shots. And I think that fit the theme of the movie as well. So, of course, in the trailer, there's a lot of little quotes and things about, scariest movie of the year. And I always take those I've become sort of resentful at those claims because it's never the case. And horror and being scared is so subjective anyway that it's really just kind of a silly claim to make. So I've been avoiding trailers as much as possible recently, but anytime I see something like that, I'm like, yeah, okay, sure. Um, that being said, though, this movie was scary. It was. I think the better way to say it is this movie was tense. I felt a lot of dread watching this movie. And so that if you're looking for something that'll make you feel kind of uncomfortable, kind of icky for a runtime of maybe 90 minutes, definitely would recommend. There is some really effective and really gross gore in this movie as well. Lots of really loud sounds, like munching, squelching. The sound design is very loud. So anything gross that happens is viscerally sort of gross because of how loud the sounds that are made in those moments are. There aren't a lot of jump scares in this movie. If that's something that you're sensitive to, most of what is frightening about it is like this prolonged feeling of dread and then a few pretty gnarly, gory moments throughout. So now we'll head into spoilers. So if you don't want any spoilers, stop the video now, go ahead and see the movie, and come back and let me know what you think. So if you didn't figure it out based on the title of the movie and watching the trailer, this is about a mother who lost her daughter, who has somehow found a way to resurrect her using this sort of ritual. And the ritual involves having two sort of vessels, I guess. One of them being a vessel for, she calls the Laura, the foster mom, who is doing this. She calls it an angel, and it's never really explicitly stated what exactly it is. Doesn't seem to be very angelic, but you know. So the angel lives in the body of the boy, the mysterious boy in the house. And it turns out she actually kidnapped him and is using him for this ritual so that she can resurrect her daughter's spirit and put it into the body of the sister who she has taken on as a foster kid after her and her brother lost their dad, right? So that is kind of like the setup for the movie. And so Laura, the foster mom, initially just wanted Piper, but ended up with both of them. So she has to kind of figure out a way to get rid of Andy. And so she does this by essentially kind of capitalizing on his trauma and making it look like he has some sort of like psychotic break, in order to get him away from Piper so that she can do this whole ritual thing. There's a few movies that I've seen lately that portray evil in a way that is very explicit and very, I'm not sure how to describe it, and maybe I'll do another video talking about some of the movies that do this. But we, had an influx of exorcism movies forever, essentially, but like early 2000s through now, we still get them. But it's kind of, we have this portrayal of evil in a very sort of stereotypical way. And it seems like recently some horror movies have been trying to do this differently, and make it more like visceral and disturbing. And I think this movie does that very well. The ritual itself involves having a vessel for the angel that feeds, like eats, the body of the deceased. So you have that shot of Laura's daughter in the freezer, and the little boy is just sort of eating pieces of her. And so once that is complete, then you have to kill the other vessel in the way that the deceased person died and have the other vessel who's been eating the deceased person. It sounds very complicated, but essentially they have to like throw up in the mouth of the new vessel and that completes like the whole thing. And you have to contain the angel within circles, essentially. Like she was doing it either like rubbing circles on the forehead or rubbing circles with her blood. The whole house is encased in a circle. And so I guess that's how you keep the vessel from reverting back to its regular whatever. And so Andy sort of accidentally gives the vessel time and space and gets them over the circle around the house, and the child that was originally there sort of starts speaking, right, revealing itself. um so kind of complicated lore, I guess, and there's no real none of this is said sort of explicitly. It's all very sort of suggested. And so we don't get this long investigation sequence or an origin story of how this woman got connected with all of this. Everything is sort of understated, which I really appreciate in this movie. Sometimes those investigative sequences can be kind of cliche and maybe slightly unnecessary. I liked that this one sort of made us think about it and work towards like understanding the rules without them being explicitly said. And some of the features of the, I guess, the ritual were very effective for me. I thought that the idea that whatever this being eats, it kind of, he takes on the characteristics of it, right? Like he had bit off the cat's tail and was like meowing, which was really spooky. He was mimicking Andy's dad, which caused him to slip and fall in the shower, right? And that just kind of like, it's eerie. It's really eerie, and so I appreciated that as well. It also gives us these opportunities for like some really really gross moments where the creature is like eating his own arm, and just some really like some really gross moments throughout. This movie had me stressed. I was stressed. I was worried about the well-being of the two protagonists, the well-being of the kid that was possessed. And I wasn't sure because I knew that this movie had a reputation, and so do, the Filippo brothers, for, I knew it wasn't going to be a bright and shining ending. So the whole time I was stressed and I was worried. And of course, it does culminate in Andy dying, being drowned in a puddle. And for how nervous and stressed out I was building up to this, I was surprised that that whole sequence didn't really make me as emotional as I maybe would have thought. And I'm not sure if that's just me and the headspace that I'm in, or if it was something about the tone or the way that it was sort of unfolding. Um, but I think that sort of twist, that sequence, that consequence stuck with me more after I left the theater than when, because I don't know, there was still so much happening, so much that was left to happen. So I couldn't really, I guess I couldn't really have my own moment of grief in that, but it did really sort of sit heavy on me after leaving the theater. And the ending sequence of Laura trying to drown Piper and then ultimately stopping because Piper yells mom, and it just sort of brings everything into focus for her. And then you have this final shot of her cradling her decomposing daughter in the pool as the police close in. It's very emotionally intense. Just so much happens. And that last shot of like overhead shot of her in the pool, also very just like intense and striking. Um, yeah, this movie was heavy. There were some things, it was a lot. There were some moments in this movie that were pretty disturbing too. Laura, the foster mom, what when she's trying to make it seem as though Andy's having real, issues, she pees in a measuring cup and then like pours it on him to make it seem like he's wetting the bed, and then like confronts him in a really uncomfortable way. Um, the fact that at one point she's trying to make it look like he's having these behavioral issues, so she puts on his body spray, and then goes into Piper's room, right? Because Piper can't see, um, she can see shapes and light, but she can't see like details. So she just smells his body spray and then gets punched pretty violently in the face by Laura. Just things like that, like very gnarly little moments. It has these little moments that really just round out the theme. One of the first things that we learn about Laura when Piper and Andy get to her house is that she has her dog taxidermied. And I think that that's just a really interesting way of making it very clear that she is someone who cannot let go, right? Someone who is holding on to the corpse of her dog just sitting in the living room, right? Kind of mirroring this inability to let go of her daughter as well. I think there's also an underlying theme around the trauma that the two siblings experience, right? Because Piper not being able to see, she is sort of shielded by everyone around her, right? Also being the favorite. So she has this line at the beginning about not wanting to use her sight stick because she doesn't want to be babied, but it seems like everyone in her life does that anyway. And while her brother's like trying to protect her, it ultimately her needing to defend herself kind of proves that she has this ability, whether the people in her life baby her or not, right? And I think that's also sort of driven in with the scene where she's playing. I've never seen this sport before, but I'm guessing it's something that is played by people who are visually impaired, because it requires like feeling vibrations and like hearing specific things. So she has these, she's able to take care of herself, and that's kind of proved in the final sequence of the movie. I think my favorite part about this movie was the footage of the rituals. Something about it was so eerie, especially, you have the opening sequence where you see the ritual, and it's very it's very intentionally filmed where you can't really get a full sense of what's going on. But those when she's watching the VHS tapes of this ritual, it is so chilling. It's so spooky, and I think it kind of fed the inner found footage nerd in me, and I think that really sort of rounded out the best part of the movie, which I think was the portrayal of the ritual. I rated this one a 4 stars. It's very, very effective, for me specifically, but it's not one that I think I would rewatch anytime soon. It is difficult, and there's not a lot of fun things about it. I did rewatch Talk to Me recently just because I love that montage. And if you've seen Talk to Me, you know what I'm talking about. But that one is also a tough watch. So definitely a great movie. I did really like it, but it's not something that I would, pop on again just to like sit with that feeling. Yeah. If you'd like to see another recommendation video like the Yucky Girls one that I did a couple weeks ago, let me know, because I do definitely have some supernatural bummers, I guess is what I could call them. Some supernatural bummers that I could recommend, similar movies to bring her back. I don't know if I'm ever going to not recommend that people go see horror in theaters. There's really no reason to say do it or don't do it. If this sounds like something that would interest you, definitely go see it. It's definitely not one that I would recommend for like beginners. If I can, if I can say that, it's very heavy. And I think, depending on what kind of horror you like, that may or may not work for some people. But definitely go and check it out. Let me know what you think, and like and subscribe for more.